So they've captured some Russian soldiers, and then they're videotaping them making confessions and cryings and stuff like that, which I don't know if you know is against the Geneva Conventions. You're not supposed to do that. So they've been doing that. And everybody, all the shit libs in America are okay with it. Just like they were okay with torture. Well, if it works, do you know they can then torture our soldiers? Do you understand why we have this Geneva Convention? Because it protects everybody. You dummies. So I just want to go over this. The Ukraine video of crying Russian prisoners could violate the Geneva Convention. Do you think? You think it could? That's from the Sydney Morning Herald. Turning out Australia is way worse than America in some ways. I never thought I would say that, but boy, are they. The way they handled COVID was certainly worse. A young Russian soldier breaks down in tears as his mother pleads with him to come home from the other end of the telephone line. Handcuffed and dressed in his army fatigues, he buries his face in his hands and breaks out in a loud sob. The unnamed soldier, who has been captured by Ukrainian forces, then urges his mother to speak to the families of other Russian soldiers, warning that no one will get a death note from Russian authorities if their sons are killed. Those effers are not taking away the bodies. They are killing the wounded, he says. I don't know if they will be swapping prisoners of war. The footage is... Now, is that really happening? Or did they make that guy say that? If you saw an American saying that, if he was captured by North Korea or Russia, would you believe it? So the footage is one of more than a dozen clips of captured. That's why you're not supposed to do it. That's why you're not supposed to videotape them and release it. That's why there's a Geneva Convention against doing that. Because it could most likely be propaganda. And they're being forced to say things. Like John McCain in Vietnam. They tortured him, tried to get him to sign confessions and say they were doing all this stuff. That's what they do. That's what this could be here. They called the guy's mother. You don't think this is straight up propaganda? They capture them in war and then they call one of the soldiers' mother? What the F? The footage is one of more than a dozen clips of captured Russian servicemen released by Ukraine authorities over the past week. The videos often show handcuffed soldiers sitting on a chair in a nondescript room. Some show signs of serious injury, their heads bruised and patched up with bloody bandages. Others are dressed in civilian clothes and look unharmed. The soldiers are rarely identified, and the footage, as well as the circumstances of the men's arrest, are nearly impossible to verify independently. Ukraine is using the blizzard of videos of confessions and emotional pleas for forgiveness to drum up support in their online campaign against Russia. Law enforcement authorities say the footage is a record of Russia's brutal military campaign in Ukraine and are using it to back up their claims Putin is committing war crimes. Isn't it ironic that you would violate captured soldiers' Geneva rights, but in order to stop someone from breaking Geneva Convention? That doesn't make sense. You got to break a few eggs and make an omelet? What are you doing? Is this like Tony Soprano giving out parking tickets again? But the videos raise questions about whether Ukraine could be violating the Geneva Conventions, which set out the legal standards for humanitarian treatment in war, including the rights of wartime prisoners. So just think about that. So what they're saying is they're committing war crimes to get confessions to war crimes. That's what they're doing. We want you to commit to your war crime. How are you going to get them to do that? We'll commit a war crime to get them to do that. I'd call that very American of them, except they aren't openly admitting to waterboarding these people yet. So Ukraine is a little more civilized than the United States, but still, it's a war crime what they're doing. Article 13 of the Geneva Convention Treaty states prisoners of war must at all times be protected, particularly against acts of violence or intimidation and against insults and public curiosity. According to the International Committee of the Red Cross, this includes circulating images on social media. Now, keep in mind, this is just the Geneva Convention saying this. This convention thinks it's a crime to torture terrorists, so you don't have to take them seriously because the United States certainly doesn't. The issue was brought to the fore last Tuesday, AEDT, when Ukrainian authorities paraded 3 battered Russian prisoners in front of TV cameras during a press conference organized by news agency Union in Kiev. It is unclear when the men were captured, but footage of 2 of the soldiers being interrogated in front of the Ukrainian flag emerged online as early as February 28th. Wow. This sounds like something out of Vietnam, right? One of those guys is Russia's next John McCain. Just keep that in mind. Sporting a bruised face, 2 missing teeth, and an unkempt beard, a prisoner identified as Dmitry Astkahov told reporters he was ashamed of Russia's actions and apologized to Ukrainians for bringing sorrow to this land. They're really doing this. So these are supposed to be these are guys who are on our side are doing this to prisoners. What we did to John McCain, what Vietnam did to John McCain. And we're the good guys somehow. You still think there's a good guy in this scenario? You still think there's a good guy in this scenario? During the 10-minute soliloquy, Astahov said the Russians had been brainwashed by authorities and the media and urged his fellow servicemen to put down their arms. The videos are likely to be perceived as a provocation and an attempt to humiliate soldiers by Russia, whose online propaganda campaign is proving to be far less successful around the world than Ukraine's. So, we're officially in the yes, it violates the Geneva Convention phase of the war, but that's never a good sign. That's from Glenn Greenwald. Do you want to see some of the tweets? I mean, if you really want to humiliate Russians, why don't you strip them down naked, put them in a pyramid, put dog leashes on them, right? And then take pictures of them, maybe get in there and do the thumbs up. I mean, that's how you humiliate prisoners of war. And nobody does it better than the United States. Come on, baby. Abu Ghraib, baby. So here's some of the... would you like this, Aaron, would you like to come in and comment on this horrific... you want to see... Have you seen any of these tweets?
No.
Let me show one. Here's one. It says, I understand Geneva Conventions, but this man seems sincere and honest. And if more people in Russia seeing this wake up from their zombified state, the better. So if we just do a couple of war crimes, I mean, it can help. It could help.
That journalist is someone who pushed the Havana Syndrome scam, the Russian bounty scam, the Russiagate scam. So Geneva Conventions aside, I don't really trust her judgment on anything to do with Russia. And look, Russians are invading Ukraine, so I imagine there are people out there who are not going to have very much sympathy with invading Russian soldiers, and fair enough. But there's a broader point here, which is that either you respect international law or you don't. And also, it just shows how there's so much propaganda, Jimmy, that we're getting about this war and all these claims being made. And this is a good example of how claims that come out are manufactured, including via war crimes, getting Russian soldiers to say things that they otherwise would not say. And they're only saying them because they're under the threat of their life. And that's why it's so difficult to trust what the media reports, because so many of the claims serve a propaganda function and may come from literal criminal activity like this that makes it impossible to trust.
So let's just look at a few more of these. This is from someone named Peter Jukes. He says, I don't usually share prisoner of war pictures. Yeah, because it's against the Geneva Convention. And it would make you a horrible person. I don't usually share prisoner of war pictures, but this is an extraordinary confession from a Russian soldier. It's important because it confirms absolutely that the line Ukrainians are fascists was not only sold to by Glenn Greenwald and the Putinists left, but most. So yeah, war crimes are bad, but come on, not this time, because it props up our narrative. What? People don't even fucking listen to them. They can't even hear themselves. Here's another one. Here's Clara Jeffrey. She's the editor of Mother Jones. And one of the worst human beings in the world. She says, this is one of the most extraordinary videos I may have ever seen. Yes, it's against the Geneva Conventions to publicly display POWs, but this is something else entirely, in my humble opinion. Yeah, because you like it. Because it's your side doing it. That's why you like it. Would you like it if those were American soldiers and they were saying that stuff? You dummy. You dumb on purpose. How does someone that dumb get out of the house in the morning, let alone have a job, let alone be someone else's boss? She's the editor of a news. It's not news. It's a complete bullshit, co-opted, owned. It's garbage, Mother Jones. But anyway.
No, Jimmy, it's the same mentality of people who will proclaim that Ukraine is a democracy, even as Ukraine, as you talked about in the last segment with Lee, shuts down opposition TV networks, just like Russia does, and is in fact even more corrupt than Russia is. And that's saying something, because Russia is pretty corrupt. These same people who pretend as if the U.S. is in Ukraine to save a democracy, it's the same kind of mentality that gets them to flout the Geneva Conventions and forget about it because it serves their propaganda aims.
I don't normally share pictures of POWs, but when I do, I drink Dos Equis. She has the brain of a collie. That is unbelievable. I like this one. Where was the one about the core? There was one about the core. I don't have it in here. Oh no. She says, this shook me to my core. This, not that you guys are endorsing a war crime. Put that, but the performance inside the war crime shook that person to their core. Wow. That shook me to my core so hard, I almost achieved a little bit of self-awareness, but nope, it slipped right through my fingers. I get it, war crimes are bad, but Russia, come on. We're living through it again. It's worse this time in my memory than it was during Iraq. During Iraq, most of the people I knew didn't believe it. There were 1 million people in the street against it. For some reason right now, every person in the world, no one sees through it, and it's because of 4 or 5 straight years of Russiagate. Prime them for this. Would you agree?
Jimmy, it's exactly what we've been warning about for the last 5 years. Entrenching as a mainstream liberal position this idea that Russia is our enemy, that diplomacy with Russia is tantamount to treason, that we have to, as Adam Schiff declared on the House floor when he led the impeachment against Trump, we have to aid Ukraine and their people so that we fight Russia over there. We don't have to fight them over here. Literally what he said. Making that standard liberal thinking has brainwashed people into believing that we have to support the national security state as it uses Ukrainians as bullet stoppers in a proxy war against Russia. It's normalized Cold War insanity, and to the point where people like Barack Obama, who did not send those weapons to Ukraine after his administration, as you've covered, backed a coup in Ukraine in 2014. Obama was under a lot of pressure, including from Joe Biden, to send more weapons to Ukraine to help them fight the Russian-backed rebels in the East who didn't want to live under a coup government that was attacking their existence, basically. And Obama resisted that because he realized that he had started a proxy war with Russia and Ukraine, and he didn't want to arm far-right Nazis, which is who was a major part of the operation in the Donbass against the Russian-speaking population. Obama's position is now a fringe position to the point where Trump got impeached after he tried to briefly pause those weapon sales to Ukraine that he reinstated after Obama left office. And now Biden has come into office and picked up where Obama left off, where Trump left off, and where Obama refused to go. And liberals cheer across the board because they've been conditioned to believe that all this is in defense of democracy and somehow about freedom, when really it's about expanding hegemony, even at the risk of a nuclear holocaust, because that's ultimately what this Ukraine conflict is about. If the U.S. is allowed to use Ukraine as a NATO proxy, then that puts the whole world at peril. It's already dangerous enough right now with the war going on and the threat of the U.S. getting involved more than it already is.
No doubt. Hey, we got more dates for our 2022 stand-up tour. We're going everywhere. We're going to Dallas, Houston, Florida. We're going to Omaha, Des Moines, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Ohio, and Los Angeles. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our shows.